Reading with your kids.
Hey, so great to see you. Come on in. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We're coming to you from the beautiful Reading with Your Kids studios in beautiful Reedville, Massachusetts. We have a wonderful guest on the show for you today. We have a wonderful guest on every show. That's why you should subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you find your podcast. Our guest today is coming to us from Ontario. He's been on the show before. He's here today to talk about his new book, Jerry the Squirrel Volume 2. His name is Shanw P B Robinson. We would be so very, very happy if you would visit readingwithyourkids.com/yummy. Readingwithyourkids.com/yummy. Go there and find out about the easiest way to snack smart and do good. We're talking about love with food. Love with Food helps you discover new, organic, all-natural, and gluten-free snacks delivered directly to your door every single month. And membership starts as low as $7.99 a month. And this is why we love with Food so much. Love with Food will donate a portion of the proceeds to help fight childhood hunger in the U.S. and all around the world. Love with Food donates to organizations like Feeding America and the Global Food Banking Network. So join us to help end childhood hunger one meal at a time. Visit readingwithyourkids.com/yummy to say goodbye to boring grocery store selections and to start snacking smart and doing good with Love with Food. Joining us right now from beautiful Ontario in Canada, where it just snowed a couple of days ago. I can't believe it. I was celebrating the fact that I had my T-shirt on the other day and the windows were open and spring is coming to Boston, and then I find out it's still snowing in Ontario. Please welcome back to the show our friend. He has a brand new book out called Jerry the Squirrel Volume 2, Shanw P B Robinson. Shanw, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks so much for having me back on the show.
Awesome to have you back on the show. Although I have to be honest with you, I was talking about spring and how wonderful spring is, and I do love it. But the thing about here, the spring means squirrels, and we have about 4,000. In fact, this is true. In fact, one squirrel built a nest inside my wife's engine.
Oh, no.
And it was actually living there for months.
Really?
Yeah.
As she was driving the car?
She was driving back and forth, taking this squirrel all around everywhere going. No problem. The squirrel was kind enough not to chew any wires that were necessary to make the car functional. But then she brought her relatively brand new vehicle that she loves in to get serviced. And the squirrel jumped out at the technicians and scared them to death. So squirrels, I don't see squirrels. Is that those fuzzy, cute little creatures that Jerry the Squirrel is?
You know, it's funny because when you describe it like that, I think that's exactly the way the squirrels are in the book. They're annoying and they're frustrating.
Well, good.
So this is perfect.
We're coming from a similar place. So tell us all about the annoying squirrels we're going to meet in Jerry the Squirrel Volume 2.
Well, you know, the squirrel, it's funny because these are based on bedtime stories that I used to tell my kids when they were a bit younger. And so I would just come up with this story about Jerry and go on about it, and they would laugh and they would be kind of excited about the stories. And my wife kept saying, "You've got to write those stories down." And so I did, and that was Jerry the Squirrel Volume 1, and then this is number 2, and it's about a squirrel who's an inventor. And so he can invent just about anything, right? But when inventions, or things are put together, they don't always work the way that they're supposed to work. And that's kind of what happens. So he puts it together and things always go haywire with it. Sometimes because of his invention, but usually because of the other squirrels. They get involved. They build a nest in his engine. And so, yeah, things go really, really crazy. They have this unique relationship with the other squirrels and how they interact. And they've got this leader squirrel who the leader just kind of, whoever wears the hat is in charge. And so if the hat falls off the leader's head and somebody else puts it on, that's the new leader. And so it creates kind of some new stories and new interesting situations. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's in that whole, the hat falls off the leader thing, and the next guy who picks it up is the new leader. That might work in some countries around the world these days. I am not going to mention any country in particular. It can't be anywhere.
It's funny because I had one review once that said something to the fact of, I think the book is speaking to current events or something like that. And I said, and I was just disappointed with it because I say right in the beginning that says, no, this is just fiction, right? And I've intentionally tried to not make some kind of point with it. But, people see points here and there. And to be honest, my goal of my stories is to give fun, family-friendly reading to families. Mm-hmm. And I want kids to love reading, not just have a passable time, not just do it because they have to do it, but absolutely love it.
Mm-hmm. It's tempting. I don't know how far off on this tangent I want to go, but you're talking about people. You're talking about people reading things into stories, and I always talk about the fact that there's a lot of, there are a lot of messages in picture books that are important for kids, but they're also important for grown-ups as well. And then there are stories that are just meant to be fun stories, but people do tend to kind of read things into it. I'm reminded of The Life of Brian, that classic Monty Python story, and I think one of the things that we can do as we're reading stories with our kids and we're talking about them, I think it's a great way for us to start talking to our kids and helping them understand what is and isn't there. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And just to talk, I think there's a really big thing because we hear the term fake news all the time and clickbait and things like that, and especially now with Russian bot farms trying to influence elections in all these different countries and other countries doing it to other countries. And it's the time that we spend reading beautiful stories like Jerry the Squirrel Volume 2 with our kids, that's the foundation that we can build on and helping them discern what is and isn't true, what is real news and what is fake news, what is coming from reliable sources. And I think that is going to be such an important skill for our kids to have.
Oh, absolutely. And I know with my own kids, I take these, I call them teachable moments, right? And it's all through life, and it's things that we read, and sometimes we're reading stories and I stop in the middle of something. I say, now hold on a second. This is sending this message here. And let's talk about that. Is that the message we want? Is that not the message we want? And I think with the stories that one of the things that I have put in to these stories in terms of that teachable message is tenacity. Mm-hmm. Is this idea of just, because Jerry, he keeps inventing and nothing really turns out the way he wants it to. And he's very frustrated with all the other squirrels, and yet he keeps pushing forward. And the same with my Arstana books that we've talked about before on this show is this poor guy has to push himself through very difficult circumstances. I think that's one of those things that we need to teach our kids, is this idea that life is going to be hard at times and frustrating, but you got to push through. you still got to accomplish what you need to accomplish. Mm-hmm.
That is such an important lesson for kids, and it's something that I touched upon in my book, The Great Maritini. It's you're gonna experience bumps in the road. There's going to be ups and downs and peaks and valleys, but you can't give up on yourself.
Absolutely not.
And that's something that I think Americans kind of say, well, that's true American value, but that's a universal value.
Yeah,
that's something that's important that has helped every country kind of rise up to where they're at now.
Well, in speaking as a Canadian, I don't see that as an American value. I see that as something we have to have. It's funny. One of the things with the Jerry stories that I wasn't expecting was that there is kids enjoy the stories, but I found a lot of adults have enjoyed it as well, and very differently than I expected. A lot of adults have enjoyed it, and they say to me, they go, "Oh, I love Jerry." And they've called and fall in love with him. And I think the reason is because Jerry's trying to accomplish all these things. It's frustrating for him and it's difficult, yet he keeps pushing through, and everything seems to be against him. And I think most of us have had times in our lives where we've had to accomplish things and everything seems to work against us. You know, you take one step forward and then you slip and slide 8 steps back. And he has people kind of undermining, or other squirrels undermining him and stuff, and it makes for a fun story and adds to the humor of it. But I think a lot of adults connect with it because they realize, you know, I can relate to Jerry, right? And I've had to push through in these circumstances. And in the end of the day, he has some close friends. He has people he can rely on. But I mean, people are odd. Squirrels are odd. That's life.
You know, that's a point too that I was actually just having a conversation about this with my niece who's 15, and just kind of understanding that part of life, part of growing up is kind of discovering who we can rely on. And it's not just people that look like us or that speak the same language, who came from the same part of the world. We need to find out who will really have our backs, and who really cares about us, and who we're going to be there for them.
Well, absolutely. Yes. You don't always see it immediately, right? Because, I mean, we all present ourselves a certain way, right? And for any number of reasons, but it's the test of time, the test of circumstances that proves who will be there for us and whether or not we'll be there for our friends.
Now, one of the things that Sean does is that he helps folks who have ideas and a goal of becoming a writer. He helps them make those dreams come true. And you were telling us that Jerry the squirrel started off as just these little stories that you told your kids, and that your wife was encouraging you to write them down and to get them published. What would you say to the folks that are out there who tell these neat stories to their kids, and their kids are always asking for, tell that story about the turtle or the spider, or that story about your grandmother, and they have in the back of their mind, it'd be kind of nice to write a book, but I'm not a writer. I don't have an MFA. I didn't go to college. I drove a truck. I drove a bus, and it's not something I can do.
Well, you know, it's funny because I write a blog on this kind of thing, and all the stuff up there is free. To me, it's not something where I'm looking to make money off of helping people with this. I just provide the information to help them simply and affordably get these things published. But it's interesting because I always say this to everybody. I say, when you first write something down, and I think people should get it down, that should be your first goal. Get it on paper, get it on the computer. If it's on the computer, save it in about 8 different places, right? But get it down, and your first draft will be horrible. I always say that, and I think some people might react like saying, "Oh, well, that's discouraging." No, actually, I think that's encouraging, because we got to recognize when we first write something, we miss things like verbs, right? We leave out we leave out things, and oftentimes we have to realize that our first draft is going to be horrible. That's what the editing stage is for. And so we have this kind of sense of, if I write this down, it's going to be terrible. Well, yeah, the first time out, it's going to be. And then you'll pretty it up. You'll make it nice. You can actually add and adjust when you go over it the second time. And that first edit that you just do yourself takes it from that horrible, rough thing to something passable that you can pass on to other people. And start yourself down that road. I would say that if somebody's got these ideas, get yourself in front of a computer or get a pad of paper in front of you and get those things down.
Yeah.
If it's in your head, you're not going to be able to share it with other people unless you speak it, right? If it's down on paper, you can get it into other people's hands, and that's where it can grow and become something wonderful.
Yeah. And not only... I encourage folks the same way that you do, and not only because, you might be the next J.K. Rowling, you might be the next Dr. Seuss, and your book might be the one that inspires a generation of kids. No, your book might be special to your kids and to their kids and maybe to their kids. And we live in an age right now where you can take that idea, you can take that story that you tell your kids that they love at 5 and 6 years old, and you can actually publish it. You can write that first terrible draft, and then you can do your self-edit, and you can share it with friends and get other folks to edit it. And then for a very little amount of money, you can actually have it printed so that you have 1 or 2 or 5 copies of it. And now it's yours, and now it's your kids, and they have it when they're 5 and 6 years old, and they still have it when they're 16 years old, and when they have 5 and 6 year olds, and you can pass it down. So, I think writing it down, taking those stories that your kids love, that you love sharing with your kids, and writing it down and turning it into a book is. It's like this new style of family heirloom that can be passed down.
Oh, absolutely. My kids, the one series has, my boys are named Liam and Ezra. And my one series, the main characters in it are Liam and Ezra. And they have this trilogy of books. Obviously not about their experiences, but the characters in it kind of mimic them in their personalities in a certain way. And they have that as a gift, and it's for them. A little while ago, a little girl that we're close to our family's close to their family in our church, she showed me something a toy that she had received for Christmas, and it was a spy, gadget of some kind. And then my wife told me, she's really into spies, and my mind got spinning. And her birthday was coming up, and I thought, I think I've got a story for her. So I wrote out a story and was able to, we went over it, my wife drew some pictures for it, and for very little money, other than the time involved, very little money, we were able to actually print her a professional copy. And so she's got this book with her name on it, about spies, about her being, drawn into a spy agency, and she has to go and accomplish a mission, and it was a birthday present for her. And there's the time involved in writing it down, but very little financial cost actually went into that. And then the great thing about that is now that's turning into a new series for me that I'm hoping to come out next year that I'll be hopefully back on the show in another year's time.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I love it's the things that inspire us, and if we can, it's amazing sometimes how just little acts of kindness, little acts of thoughtfulness can mean so much in the life of a kid or the life of an adult.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we set the standard for them, right? And they remember these things. They may not grasp it all. Like if you think back to when you were a child and you think of the kind things that people did for you, and you didn't recognize what they had done for you until you're an adult. But then when you're an adult and you recognize and you look back and you say, I can do that for them. Mm-hmm. Right? And you recognize those times when you needed kindness and maybe didn't receive it, and you say, you know what, I can show that kindness now, because this child needs it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So very, very important. Like you said, in the case of the book that you created for that friend, very little financial investment, and in terms of sharing a kind word, that's absolutely free.
Oh, absolutely. As a child, I used to read anything I could get my hands on, and the thought that if somebody had written a book for me, about me as a child, it would have been thrilling. I remember my sister wrote a short little story. It was probably 200 words, something like that, and wrote it out. I think I still have that. Mm-hmm. She gave it to me probably when I was about 7, something like that. That idea of being given a gift like that, taken on an adventure, this imaginary adventure or whatever, in a story is just fantastic, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think a lot of people can do this, and they don't realize it because it seems so far away. Yet we have the technology with things like print on demand. It used to be if you wanted a book, you had to print 5,000 copies, mm-hmm. and you had to pay that money, right? Now you can print one copy, mm-hmm. and the expensive parts usually sometimes the shipping of getting it to you.
Yes, and it's beautiful, and it is. It's just a wonderful thing. And the same thing, if your kid's working really hard and they've written their own kind of picture book, you can sit down and work with them and, get that one copy done. Or if they, it just popped into my mind. Imagine what a beautiful Christmas gift your kids could create for their grandparents or their aunts or uncles if they wrote a picture book and you were able to sit down and do that print on demand thing and print out that one book for their grandparents that your kids wrote for them.
Well, a number of years ago, and I think I mentioned this, my youngest son's adopted from Rwanda. And after we came back, we went on one of those online services, right, and made up a book with pictures of the process and a bit of the story and things like that. And really exciting, one of those keepsakes. But those types of things sometimes end up being very expensive, and sometimes you're very limited in how you can do it. And now, after going through this process, I realize I can do that myself for a lot less money, and I can instead of spending a huge amount of money for one and not being able to afford a second one, I could produce as many as I wanted.
Yeah, it's the difference, that you see them all the time. Get your Facebook memories put into a book for $75. Well, no, you can go to Amazon and do the same thing, just with a little bit of technical know-how for $5 or $6.
Yeah, and you can make as many as you want, right?
Yes, absolutely. Well, your website has all sorts of wonderful advice, and of course more information about Aristania, and also your Jerry the Squirrel series. And also have a great link to our past interviews, which is great to see. Tell people tell people to find where they can find your website.
Well, it's pretty simple. It's my name. It's www.shawnpbRobinson.com. It's ShawnPBRobinson.com, and you can get all that information about how to publish. There's information on my books, and there's also a series that I did on there just recently called My Encephalitis Journey, which is about a battle with viral infection that I had a couple of years ago, and I just walked people through what it was like for about a 2 or 3 week period, and had a lot of interest in that, and a lot of people reading about that, and it's been a good encouragement, I think, for people.
Mm-hmm. I have a feeling that's what you're about, helping folks find encouragement, helping folks find that tenacity and that grit, and especially helping kids find that.
Oh, absolutely. I love pouring into people and encouraging them, right? People are so precious, right? Regardless of their stage of life or what circumstances they're in. And I think sometimes we all recognize that life can be difficult. And I think back to some of the struggles I faced as a result of this illness I had a couple of years ago and continue to face. But life can be difficult, but with that encouragement, oftentimes it gives us the strength to make that next step. And I think we need to be that support for one another.
Absolutely. I love that. Everybody, did I say the quote right? Everybody is precious?
Everybody's precious,
yes,
yeah.
Absolutely. Well, everybody is precious, and Jerry the Squirrel Volume 2, he's not going to build a nest inside my wife's engine. The other squirrels might. The other squirrels might, but not Jerry. Check it out, Jerry the Squirrel Volume 2, brand new book from our friend Shanw P B Robinson. Shanw, great seeing you here. Can't wait for your next visit.
Well, thank you so much. It was great talking to you, too.
Please be sure to join us for the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We have a hilarious show coming up to you. Russell Gins, he is the author of Samantha Spinner and the Spectacular Specs. This really is. I was laughing throughout most of the show. You do not want to miss it. That's why you want to subscribe to the show on iTunes, on Spotify, on the iHeartRadio app, wherever you find your podcast. Hey, if you're the author of a great children's book, we would love to have you as a guest on the podcast. Being a guest, it's fun, it's easy, and it is absolutely free. Gives you the chance to tell thousands of people all around the world about your great children's book. All you need to do to be a guest is to check out our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Click on the contact button. Let us know about your great book. We'll let you know the next easy steps. Hey, I want to thank Shanw P B Robinson for telling us all about Jerry the Squirrel Volume 2. I want to thank my amazing producer, Fatima Khan. I want to thank my beautiful wife. And I want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.